It's time for another edition of Tampa 2. Casey Phillips here with staff writer Brianna Dix, and this unfortunately is going to be a bit of a season wrap-up.
Yeah.
Tampa 2.
Yeah.
Really thought that we'd be doing another one with another game recap and preview. We were so close. It was right there. And it's funny because this was my 9th season here, and seasons always feel a little different at the end.
Right.
It's always sad when it comes to an end unless you win the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
That's
right.
always just how it works. But, and I know everybody was so sad around the building the next day in terms of, we felt like we could have won. But I feel like this was such an encouraging season overall. I did not walk away from this season feeling the way you normally are, like,
Right.
anything but a Super Bowl is a failure.
Defeated.
Yes, that it was like they were right there, but I just felt like it was a fun season to be a part of. There's so much to be excited about.
Right.
So we're going to definitely talk a little bit about season overview and looking ahead a bit. But let's start just with this game for now. What were some of your big takeaways from it?
My biggest takeaway from the Lions game is I really think, despite the outcome of the game, it really kind of was a microcosm to me of the season. You know, they continuously rallied from behind. They came back, kept it close, cut the deficit to 8 points there in the end after the Lions had scored. Because, it was tied at 17 going into that third quarter. And then the Lions put up I think it was like a 89-yard and then a 75-yard touchdown drive. But then Baker Mayfield orchestrated that methodical drive at the end to Mike Evans. And I really think just that threading the needle pass to Chris Godwin that moved the chains, got that touchdown, and then they were within 8. And then, of course, the interception at the end that kind of sealed the defeat. But I really just think you saw just the stamina of this team, but just their willingness to fight through adversity. It rallied from behind multiple times, didn't lose their heads, didn't get defeated, didn't get demoralized, and really stayed in that game. And then defensively, they kind of gave up in spurts. The Lions were able to kind of exploit the middle of the field with Sam Laporta, with Amon-Ra St. Brown. But, you had Jamel Dean that had an incredible game before he exited with the back injury, had 3 passes defensed, crowded the catch space, played out of his mind, and then rookie Kalijah Kancey, my gosh, whether it was his batted pass that led to the Lions' first 3 and out on their opening drive, or that sack that forced the punt where he just absolutely annihilated the blocker with the cross chop and immediately got past him to take down Jared Goff. So I think you saw a lot of the exciting pieces. And this team went further than anyone externally expected them to go. But not only did they make it to the divisional round, but they put up a fight against the Lions, and they absolutely dominated the Eagles in the wildcard round.
I agree. I loved the idea of the fight that this team showed in this game in the season. It did feel like this game in some ways was a bit of a microcosm of the season overall.
Yeah.
And a lot of the ways that they grew, and I thought it was so great, especially watching how, so Rashad averaged 6.1 yards per carry.
You'll love to see it.
Love to see it, especially compared to how the season started with that. And, he had 55 rush yards after only having 26 versus the Lions the last time. And that's even knowing that we were behind a fair amount. And so, again, it's not necessarily a game that is conducive to having a ton of rush yards, but it was still such an improvement over that first matchup. And he had 8.3 yards per carry in the first quarter. That's his second highest mark through the first quarter of any game in his career. We've talked about this of being able to start fast and establish the run fast so that it opens everything up. And I felt like this was one of those indicators of this is where this offense had gotten to by the end of the year. And hopefully it is a sign of what it can be also to start this next year. And then, of course, he got his first career postseason touchdown, which I loved. And so Baker, I loved some of these stats about him, especially in the postseason. So 5 postseason passing touchdowns, at least. I guess he ended up with 6, second most in franchise history. So both games, he had at least 3 passing touchdowns. So it tied Brady for the most games like that in franchise history. And again, anytime you can say you tied Brady in something, I feel pretty good about it. Yeah. And then also he now has the only 2 300-yard, 3 touchdown passes in games. Sorry, I said all that wrong. He's the only. I just screwed up all the way.
There's a lot of mumbo jumbo.
A lot of numbers. He has the only 2 300-yard, 3 touchdown passing games in Bucs playoff history. 4th highest postseason passer rating among active players in the postseason. That last stat really got me. Because, again, that's not even just his time here with the Bucs. That's his whole career and all these guys of active NFL quarterbacks. There's a lot of really talented NFL quarterbacks. Right. For him to have the 4th highest postseason passer rating among active players is incredible. And I just felt like we saw Baker there was so much doubt going into the season. People did not say that this signing was this guaranteed great thing. And to see him rise to the occasion in the playoffs, see him rise to the occasion when he was hurt at the end of the season, just to grit it out and do whatever he needed for the team. I really loved seeing that of his. And we know, again, that interception at the end of the game, he would love to have that back. But overall, over the course of the season, really protected the ball well. And
incredible year.
Yeah, I mean, just his ability to extend plays and scramble, I thought it was really great. Of course, Mike, 147 yards receiving, and that's even with a couple drops that, again, I know he'd love to have back and are not typical for him. Fourth career 100-yard receiving game in the postseason, and a new postseason career high in yards, which, again, for Mike, saying something. God, his back-to-back plays at the 27-yard catch and the 31-yard catch back-to-back that got you down to the one, and it was just such an acrobatic, incredible. That was just like peak Mike Evans.
Peak Mike vintage,
And I loved that. Again, he'd already had a drop, and to know that then anytime Mike has a play that isn't characteristic of him, he is going to come back and redeem it with something even bigger and better. And what that says about his mentality and everything is really great. And again, Cade Otton, love to watch the growth he's had this year. I loved the one drive that we might as well have just called the Cade Otton drive.
Yeah, he was just the Cade Otton show.
I felt like it was just Canales radioing to Baker, like, throw it to Cade. Like, that was just like the whole
Cade is your
drive.
guy.
And then also, of course, his touchdown in the second quarter. It's been really cool to see him get some credit for what he's done for this offense, that he's done a lot of the things that don't always show up in the stat sheet. He's playing dang near every snap all season. I've loved seeing that now in some of these recent games, he's also gotten some of the catches and yards and stuff in the postseason, to see the growth in his second year, and that he is the guy you can call upon in the big moments.
Well, and I love it too, because I don't think it's just, a lot of times with tight ends, it's like the chip and release routes, or the little stuff over the middle of the field, the crosser, things like that. But it's like, I feel like the game against the Lions, he really showcased what he's able to do. I mean, the catch he made along the boundary, where he just did the little toe drag, got both feet down. I mean, that is extremely hard to do. And not only that, but the out nut play, I think both of those were over like 20-yard gains that were kind of pushed the Bucs down, and then they were able to score. But I think it really just showcased his ability as kind of that hybrid playmaker and the multifaceted tight end for this team, and what he's potentially able to do, and not just from like a route running standpoint, but just the precision, all of the above. I think that game was really big for him.
I agree. And then, I love you brought it up on defense. Jamel, lights out game before he got hurt. Levante, of course, being Levante, now second only to Derek Brooks in postseason tackles in franchise history. And what's crazy is I think he's 19 short of Derek Brooks.
Wow.
So if Levante is back next year, which, of course, I'm sure everyone would love for him to be, you make a couple. That to me sounds like, knowing Levante, that sounds like about 2 playoff games. And he could do that very easily.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, heck, he could probably do it in 1, but most likely in 2 games. And I just think that would be incredible, because, again, anytime you are catching Derek Brooks in Bucs franchise records, that is saying something.
Rare air.
And then, I love this. He's the first Buc with 10-plus tackles and a sack in a single postseason game. Just still, even at this point in his career, putting up numbers that no one's done before at any age, at any point. And it makes me really happy for him that this year he was still playing at just the incredibly high level. And we saw, don't you dare throw a screen while Levante is out there. He's gonna sniff it out.
Screen sniffer.
Yep. So we've talked a little bit about it, but what are some of the big overall season takeaways for you that stands out now that we've had a second to kind of step back and evaluate it?
I think one of the biggest things for me, and kind of like we touched on earlier, but just the ability to persevere through adversity. And when their backs were against the wall, 4-7, not much was expected, and then you end up making it to the divisional round. And I think for specifically offensively, it was like we had kind of echoed throughout these Tampa 2s this year, but just Dave Canales, his mindset to not sacrifice the future for the now. You know, when the run game wasn't quite working, the Bucs' ability to adjust. And when you weren't getting those 5, 6, 7-yard runs, you were manufacturing it. You were finding ways to get guys in space, whether it was the screens, whether it was the empty packages, whether it was Rashad out of the backfield, all of these things to get him in space and to get that working to where you could get the inside zone, the counter action, all of those things, and the play action to kind of kickstart that offense. And then because they were able to do that, then you started to see the run game really take off. And even though the stats may not show it or where the Bucs rush offense ended up ranking, like this team showed balance. And a lot of times that run game, Rachaad White became a focal point of this offense. And I think a lot of it is just also the grit and the high effort that Baker Mayfield showed. And even during the broadcast, I loved, they were saying a lot of his like previous stats and the career highs and stuff that he hit this year. But also, I did not realize that he was the first walk-on to win the Heisman.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And I thought that was incredible. But even just that, I mean, you have seen Baker Mayfield rise and defy the odds at every single turn. And this year he did it threefold, for this team. And then defensively, I think this team kind of just continued with what they do best in stopping the run. They finished, I think going into the divisional round, they were 5th in run defense. Just kind of continuing to build that stone wall, making teams become one-dimensional. Was big. And then just all of the guys stepping up, whether it was veterans, young guys. I mean, Kalijah Cansey, Yaya Diaby, incredible seasons. Antoine Winfield Jr., first team All-Pro, just playing like his hair is on fire. And just, seeing just that camaraderie with the guys. And then even Levante David just playing like the ageless wonder that he is. Sideline to sideline, just his leverage, the pursuit, his tackling ability. I think it was one of those things that even though he doesn't really get a lot of times the recognition that he deserves, this is a Hall of Fame caliber player, and whether or not, the bust happens or whatever, like, I just feel like you're watching Bucs history happen.
Yeah.
So that was in the same with Mike Evans. So that was exciting this year.
I agree. I think that one of my big takeaways is just how amazing it is that this team found a way after going all in for a Super Bowl, where typically if you're going to do something like that, it means there's going to be a bit of a crash and burn later.
Well, and the cap situation
because of the cap situation.
Horrible.
That's how it works. If you get rid of either a ton of draft picks or a ton of money or a ton of whatever, typically teams are going to end up having to
rebuild,
bottom out.
Right.
And I remember when Jason Light kept talking about, we're not rebuilding, we're reloading.
Yeah.
And I think I remember a lot of people being like, yeah, okay, call it whatever you want. But it's like, no,
Sure.
they really did.
Right.
That's exactly what happened. And what a privilege to get to watch a team win a Super Bowl, go all in, where they do that all over again, and then to not have to go through a 1, 2, 3, 4 win kind of season.
Right.
After that, to still be competing, to be winning your division, making the playoffs with, and I've heard people compare it to fighting with one arm tied behind your back when you have $80 million in dead cap space.
Yes. Yeah.
To not have to bottom out with that speaks so highly of the front office and this coaching staff and the players and what everybody has done, and to go against the odds, right? When everyone's picking you, 31st in the league and things like that.
That we were going to win 3 games.
Yeah, and I love that this team was like, yep, nope, we know what we have here, and we're not going to listen to any of that.
Right.
We're not going to let that influence us. And it really did seem to influence this underdog, chip on the shoulder mentality moving forward, and thought that was really great. And yeah, just Coach Canales in his first year as a coordinator, I loved watching him not give up on what he knew he needed to do and his plan and who he was and why they brought him in here. I think everyone knows your first time doing a new job, it can be easy to lose your confidence or get influenced by what you think is, what other people are wanting you to do. And I think it was so great to see him be like, no, this is what I believe in. And even though it's not working right away, we're sticking with it. And we saw that pay out. We saw the buy-in of the team, which speaks to his leadership abilities of getting them to not give up on it either. And just to see the growth in the offense. And I thought this was really interesting. So I looked at Rashaad's stats in particular, September and October, and then November, December, and to kind of see what they looked like. So September and October were almost identical to each other. 48 and 44 carries, 150 and 155 yards. Longest run was 13 and 15 yards. So those are your September and October stats. Gotcha. November, December, 64 and 97 carries, 254 and 356 yards, and longest runs of 38 and 30. And I'm like, man, what a example of first half versus second half.
Yeah.
And what this says about what this offense figured out when it came to the run game, the offensive line, building their chemistry, getting to know each other. I really thought that was an exciting takeaway for me to be able to so clearly see the growth in that area.
Right.
So speaking of that, how about we go with an offensive MVP? Who would you pick for the
I
year?
am going to go, this may be the obvious one, but I'm going to go with Baker Mayfield.
Hey, you know what? Why not?
You know, I just can't say enough about the year that he's had, and not even just from a production on the field route where he showed himself to be a franchise quarterback in the NFL, but also just the intangibles. I mean, this was a guy that galvanized that locker room. The team rallied around him. He has that leadership style that commands attention and people listen. And I think he was exactly what this team needed to have success on offense. And I loved, so this year he had career highs in games started with 17, completion percentage 64.3%, passing yards 4,044, and touchdown passes with 28.
So all those are career
All
highs.
those are career highs for Baker Mayfield in 2023 with the Bucs. And I think him just having that stability, he wasn't always put in the best position to have success. They maximized his skill set, but also just the underrated arm talent that he has. I'm just so surprised year in and year out how that's still a thing that seems to be invariably linked to him. But you saw him not only just making the intermediate passes, but also just driving the ball down the field. I mean, he made some highlight reel incredible throws, whether it was down the field to Trey Palmer, to Mike Evans. And then also just the game. I mean, I think probably what sums it up better than anything was just the job that he did against the Packers, where he had the perfect QBR going into a hostile environment that it is not easy to play in that historical place at Lambeau Field. And how he was just able to carve up their defense, exploited the zone with the seam beaters, just his understanding of leverage, of zone, climbing up in the pocket, the anticipation, the poise that he had. And I think we've just kind of seen that play out throughout the season, or just even the high effort when he was dealing with the ankle, the ribs injuries, still making those gutsy, gritty runs when the Bucs needed a third down. He put it all out on the field this year. And I think that's something that was definitely exciting to see, and was just what a breath of fresh air I think that he was for this team.
I totally agree. I think what really impressed me about him were the two different parts that you mentioned of his leadership, and leadership in a way that was a man of the people.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
You know, Tristan Wirfs talked about that of like,
yeah.
look, I loved Tom Brady. I wasn't going to get a beer with Tom Brady. Brady probably wouldn't even look at a beer for fear of what it might do health-wise. I don't know. But he was saying, Baker's our guy. Like, he comes to all of our stuff. He hangs out with us. I saw
meal room conversation
everything.
every day.
Just a man of the people, which I thought was great. And then also, the grit and determination that makes everybody else want to play hard too. If your quarterback is putting his body on the line, he's trying to throw a stiff arm, he's trying to scramble, he's trying to elude, that he is going to do everything possible, even when he's hurt. He's got banged up ribs and a sprained ankle or whatever it was. And he is scrambling to make it happen on third down. That inspires the whole team. And I really was impressed with his ability to extend plays and his elusiveness. There were so many times this season that I thought he was down. I thought he was sacked, it was over, and then he just pops out of nowhere. I was like, man, that's a skill that I don't think I realized he had. My MVP I chose was Rashad. I felt like the fact that he did so much.
Same page.
Yeah, I knew.
He's one of my other ones.
I figured that it was either going to be Baker or Rashad at this point, and I felt like Rashad, the fact that he just did whatever ended up being asked of him, that, when the run game wasn't working, all right, great, he's in the pass game. And both of those things he was doing also opened it up for a lot of other people on the team. That when he was able to be a threat in those dump offs, that helps Mike and Chris, you know. And so I felt like what he was able to bring early in the season with the pass game and later in the season with both the pass and the run game set a lot of other people up for success. So that was why I chose him for my sort of MVP there. I thought this was really interesting. I looked up yards for the whole league of individual players. He ranked 7th in receiving as a running back. Wow. And there's only one running back ahead of him. The other people on the list ahead of him are guys like CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Like, they're all wide receivers.
Yeah.
Right. It makes sense. That Rashad was 7th. I thought that was so incredible. So yeah, that was my choice for that. So how about defensive MVP? I have a feeling that
I went with the obvious choice. I went with Mr. Antoine Winfield Jr.
Yep.
And I have to read out some of these stats because I know stats blah, but I mean these are telling.
They're important.
But so first team All-Pro, not a Pro Bowler, but first team All-Pro. Again, telling.
Yep, we're all fine. We're fine. We're not bitter.
At the time of the announcement, he had amassed 122 tackles, 6 for loss, 12 passes defensed, 8 quarterback hits, 6 sacks, 6 forced fumbles, 4 fumble recoveries, and 3 interceptions. My gosh. He was the best safety in the NFL this season, and it was not even close.
Yep.
But he finished the 2023 year with a share of the league lead in both forced fumbles and fumble recoveries, joining Hassan Reddick as the only players to accomplish that feat since at least 2000. And then among defensive backs, he finished first in sacks, first in forced fumbles, first in fumble recoveries, tied for third in takeaways, and third in quarterback hits. Jeez.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I mean, a guy that just played absolutely out of his mind, just his pursuit to the ball. I mean, he's a guy that just consistently was around the ball every single game. And, I mean, we would just laugh up in the press box because it's like every 5 seconds.
Antoine
Winfield Jr. But he just, I mean, whether it was that play he made at the goal line to knock the ball out to prevent that touchdown. I mean, just a guy that absolutely wreaked havoc and was a person that offensive coordinators had to game plan around. They did not want to throw to his side. They schemed protections around him. And that's just telling and just a testament to his ability, whether it's him in the post, whether it's him around the line of scrimmage, making tackles, disrupting the run, getting to the quarterback with his closing burst, just a guy that is able to do it all. But I think a lot of times in the NFL that can get, you know, when you say hybrid, I think it's changed a lot because nowadays that isn't a knock. Now it's okay, he does all of these things, but he does them all at an elite high level.
Yep.
So just absolutely historical year from him. Can't say enough about what Antoine Winfield Jr. did this year.
It's funny because I obviously knew you would choose him, and so I thought, well, should I pick someone else? And then I just thought, nope, he's it. I mean, of course, Levante played incredible. We had plenty of guys on defense play really well.
Right.
But I felt like it would just be because we're trying to come up with different answers. I thought, no, he's it.
God, I mean, his instincts, just
they're incredible.
Constantly around the ball.
I think what I'll say about him that I thought was really cool that I learned this year, I talked to some of the coaches about him and what stands out to them about him, and they said the way he practices is so unique that they said, you know, a big issue nowadays because of just all the safety rules that we're big fans of in practice, but the tackling sometimes struggles in the NFL, that you've seen that is harder now that guys can't fully practice it as much. And they talked about how Antoine is so intentional with, even though he's not going to be able to hit everybody, he always breaks down, comes in exactly technically how you would. There's no just kind of like, we're just going to pretend kind of two-hand touch over here. He approaches exactly as if he's about to tackle.
Right.
And then just pulls up in that moment. And he was almost always one of the last people off the field. He was doing jugs work or other things. Like he was always doing extra stuff. And they said that they could tell how intentional he was about, I will practice the way I want to play.
Yeah.
That I do not take any of this lightly. I don't take any plays off in practice. And I just thought that was pretty incredible. And then, you know, even down to little things like he comes out to practice barefoot first.
One with the grass.
One with the grass. One with the earth. And, you know, I'm like, you know what?
I genuinely don't.
Whatever
I don't
works.
understand.
I think you and I should start doing it, obviously. It works.
Yeah.
All of us should start just walking outside barefoot.
Then it's like the touching of the feet, and then it's the grass.
This is why we're not as excellent as Antoine.
Yeah,
this is what we need to do. All right, so let's move on to most improved player this year.
So to continue what you did earlier, I went with Rachaad White. And I think just I really think throughout the season you saw him running harder. You saw the anticipation, you saw the vision, him locating the tight creases, him hitting the holes, whether it was between the tackles or even just, like you said, gaining the yak, quickly accelerating, getting north in the open field, making guys miss, gaining those additional yards that the Bucs needed to kind of elevate that offense, gain the momentum. But just what a season he had, whether it was from pass catching, rushing, And again, I think he was around 10 yards short of hitting 1,000 yards rushing. He finished with over 1,000 scrimmage yards. But I mean, you look at his numbers and he ranked right up there with the best in the league, especially for a dual threat back. So, I mean, coming in just only in his second year, and like coaches have kind of reiterated throughout the season, I think you really just saw them get a good feel of the runs that he's best at, and just the ability that Harold Goodwin, Joe Gilbert, Skip Pete, all of these guys did in creating those runs, scheming things up to give him and put him in the best position to have success on the field.
I agree.
So that was really, really fun to watch.
Yeah, I loved seeing how his pad level changed. Suddenly, he was coming forward instead of backward once he got hit, and he was being so much more decisive, it felt like, when he was hitting the holes.
Aggressive.
Yes, exactly. You could tell, I feel like even just a confidence level of like, I know what I'm supposed to do. I know where I'm supposed to go. Yeah, I thought that was great. My choice, I went back and forth between Cody Mauch and Zion McCollum. I think I'm ultimately going to go with Zion, but I just wanted to give Cody a shout out because I did see just so much from him. The coaches all talked about that they really saw a lot of growth in him, which is exactly what you want from like a smaller school guy. Right. You know it's probably going to be a bit of an adjustment, but you want to see them stick with it, not lose their confidence, and that's exactly what he did. But Zion McCollum, I loved how, first of all, Kevin Ross, the cornerbacks coach, called that shot before the season and said, Zion will be the most improved player this year. Like, he said that in his media availability before the season ever started, and he was right. And Zion just, man, I mean, Coach Bowles was like, I just got to get him on the field, even if Jamel and Carlton are both healthy. There were a lot of times they were both injured, and Zion was always ready to answer that call.
Right.
But even when they were both healthy, Bowles was just like, man, I feel like I got to put him out there. And these last couple games, to watch him be playing safety, corner, nickel, everything, like, and he just took it in stride as a young player who had not really been a starter in this league before, was just like, whatever you need me to do, I'm here to do it, and he did it really well.
Right.
And he had to face, some of the top wide receivers this year, and he just did a really good job. So I thought that was great to see. And Coach Bowles has said he might be the most athletic corner he's ever coached. That is a sentence.
And just insane speed.
Insane speed at his size, his length, all of that. I feel like it's all up from here for Zion, and his confidence is so different than it was last year that I'm really excited to see what next year will hold. And we will close with this rookie standout.
Ooh, alrighty. I'm going to go with Yaya Diaby. And again, just loved his stats, but he ranked first in tackles for loss among rookies with 12 and third in sacks among rookies with 7.5. But just, man, what a season he had. Earned playing time as a starter opposite Shaq Barrett. Just his contributions on the field, just power rusher, but just his ability, I think, really kind of just opened up things in pressure packages, in the twists and stunts with his short area burst. But just, he absolutely had an incredible season along with Kalijah Cansey. And I think just kind of helped solidify that front and kind of give people another piece in there, that rotational guy that can come in and immediately make an impact. And I think we saw that week in and week out for him.
Yeah, it's funny. We don't normally coordinate before this show. We just answer whatever we think our answers are. But this time we did coordinate on this question because we knew we would both be choosing either Yaya or Kalijah. And so it was like, you know what, let's just split it up because the two of them were such rookie standouts. It was wonderful. And so you took Yaya, I'm taking Kalijah. I was so impressed that he missed a lot of time early with injury. He missed basically all of training camp. He played like 11 plays to start the first game and then missed a bunch of games then. That can kill a lot of rookies. You are starting out, you're trying to learn, you're trying to get a feel for the NFL, and you miss all that really crucial time. That can be a confidence killer. It can really affect how ready you are. And both times, so when he came, even just in those 11 plays after missing training camp, he flashed immediately. It didn't seem like it took any time for him to get his feet wet, was ready to go. Then missed more time, came back in, same thing. That it was like the injuries had just never happened, and I had so much respect for that.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, he ends up with just in these playoff games, so 6 total tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and 1.5 sacks, and a pass defensed in these 2 playoff games. That's not bad for a rookie in his first playoff experience. So regular season, in just 14 games, 26 tackles, 10 for loss, 12 quarterback hits, 4 sacks, and a pass defensed. So as Defensive Rookie of the Month, he got nominated for November, which first Buck to win it since, Antoine. Not too bad. Just in November, he had the 7 tackles for loss and 2 sacks. I loved seeing this, and there were even more than that maybe. I think we all knew he could have the pass rush ability.
Yeah.
But what I think I heard from coaches that was so cool was how much he exceeded expectations in the run game. And as you brought up earlier, how much the run game is such a big part of our identity on this defense, which it tells you how much they thought of his pass rush ability, that they would still bring him in when they thought they didn't know how good he'd be in run defense, that they were like, it's still worth a try because of what he can bring. But for them to be like, man, he was far from a liability, that he was doing great in the run game. And how exciting that here you get this guy that you bring in for one reason, and then you get this cherry on top of you're also great in the run game.
Yeah.
And I just think that, again, for him, watching some of his pass rush moves, watching his quickness, all of it, it's going to be really fun moving forward. And just the combination of he and Yaya, to me, it's this incredible feel good about the future vibe.
Yeah.
That you have these two young, hungry guys that are really good friends, that help each other, such a tight-knit rookie group. And I just have to imagine that Coach Bowles is like, man, this is exciting.
Yeah, well, and just the infusion of speed. You know, I think you saw that from both of them, just with Kalijah, his quickness off the ball, and then also with Yaya, just the lateral agility that he has that really I think you saw come out on the twist, the stunts, just whether he was looping inside. I mean, all of those different things that kind of opens up those exotic pressure packages that we know were a trademark of Todd Bowles. And both of those guys just really set the tone, I think, this year.
I agree. All right, well, that's going to do it for us on this first off-season edition of Tampa 2. We will be back for some of the sort of tent pole events of the off-season and a few other times, so make sure you stay tuned for our next Tampa 2 right here.